not sure that being brought up in the 50s was a tough time, I think. I'm older than you are, and there was a lot of pressure on, I think, girls particularly in the 50s to sort of fall into that Donna Reed image, you know, and if you didn't, it was tough going. And it was not my undergraduate experience. I look now I've been back to my 40th college reunion. I cannot tell you how difficult it was to be a female undergraduate at Stanford University in 1958. All the cards were stacked in favor of the guys for a whole lot of reasons. They had fraternities but not sororities because some political's daughter had committed suicide during Rush and they weren't sure how that went. You lived in segregated housing and you couldn't have a car and you had no social structure, so the only way that you could sort of escape from it was to either have a steady boyfriend whether you wanted it or not. And you know, it was just, it's not that it was overtly miserable, I don't mean that, but there were a lot of odd pressures and it was sort of hard, at least for me. It was a very transitory age because I can remember demonstrating against TUAC, I think in 1960. Some of us went up to San Francisco, we all got washed off the courthouse steps, you know, when there was that. So that was the end of the McCarthy, you know, thing, and we were heading into Vietnam. It was my first husband then died in Vietnam. A few years later. So it was a very odd time in American history. You know, we'd come off World War II and we'd gone through the 50s and we were, you know, clearly a world power, and, you know, there was this sort of huge image that had been sold to us by television and other things. And then wham, we went into the 60s. My husband, who's quite a bit younger than I am, is a child of the 60s in a way that I can't understand any more than he understands me as a child of the 50s. We often talk about that. And when I say quite a few, it's actually only 6 years, but you know what? It could be a whole, it's a whole generation.
Well, it is, because quite a few of my friends are in their middle 60s, early 70s, because like I said, Fox Hunters never get really old.
Right.
And their view of things is very different than mine. Not that we don't agree politically, often we do, but many of them, particularly the women more than the men, still have an anger at feeling they were held back and belittled and diminished, and in many ways they were. But I often look at it, because I was, of course, the generation that fought back. I'm on the other side of the Grand Canyon. And I said, yes, but there were also rewards you had that I'll never know.
Well, that's true. I'm not angry. I was just confused. Yeah. And as I say, spoiled for choice. And I think it would have been, you know, if I hadn't had so many possibilities, maybe it would have been simpler. I always wondered, how did people know? How did you know when you were 16 that you really wanted to be a writer? How did you know, you were going to be a nurse or, you know, whatever? And I used to look at people who have almost like vocations, you know, among my friends at school, and I think, how'd they do that?
Well, don't you think some vocations show very early?
Apparently.
Usually a gift in the arts shows when they're tiny. The same with athletic ability. It shows up so early. And some children come into the world wanting to heal. You know, they really want to, you know, they'll start healing their little pets or putting splints on them or whatever, and they may wind up in medicine. And then there are others that it'll be a stroke of luck or a gift from the gods, and then they'll know.
Or a seminal moment. Now, you had an interesting educational background. You have a PhD in what, political studies?
I do. I got my undergraduate degree in English and classics, and I will say to the day the good Lord yanks my chain, is that if you don't know Latin, you don't know English. You just don't. And why would anybody want to be a writer without having the tool? And then I went on, and I, you know, did more work, and then I finally got my PhD in political science. But really, what it was still classics, because I used Aristophanes' The Birds as my thesis, and in the sense that I said writing has always been political since the beginning, and so then I had to go defend my thesis, and I would never do that again. Why I did it, I don't know. That PhD piled higher and deeper.
But did you, you know, could you foresee what kind of writer you were going to be? I mean, what was it that sort of fell out of you? I mean, you're a writer now of, you know, commercial fiction, good commercial fiction. But did you think you might have gone differently? Maybe you'd been an academic, or?
I could no more be an academic than I could fly. Me either. I couldn't do it.
Yeah.
It's too, if I'm going to have that kind of infighting and pettiness, then I want to be in a Fortune 500 corporation when I take home a really big paycheck. I'm not doing it for what they get. I'm not. And they're fine, they're wonderful, and they get 2 months, but I really don't like the academe very much. I didn't know what I was going to do so much, but I knew I had this great underpinning. I had this great foundation because of the education that I'd chosen. And what I wanted to do was write simply. I wanted to use the English language that I thought at its highest and best manner and use it in a way that nobody was aware that I was doing it. In other words, I wanted to be invisible. I wanted the people to jump off the pages at you as though you'd have been invited into a party, or that you knew them, they breathed. You knew when they'd eaten mince that day, so to speak. And I think sometimes when people make a great big show of how smart they are, they're actually weakening their books, because character is plot. Character is fate. I mean, Heraclitus said it long before I did. And it's all about character. The animals are character. They have character, as do the people. So that was my great big push, and I didn't know where it was going to go, because when I was young and started writing, oh my God, everybody was still imprisoned in existentialism. I mean, when that load of crap came over the boat from France, from Camus and Sartre, they should have just dumped it in Boston Harbor like they did the tea, because it ruined a generation of American writers. Just all a Twitter with alienation, you know, and aloneness and not knowing, and is there a God? And I'm like, oh, for God's sakes, Mary, get over yourself. But that's me. I'm
Right.
pretty basic. I'm a farmer, remember. And I knew I would never do that, or be these guys that wrote these big fake butch books, you know.
Right.
You know, where adjectives are, there are a few of them, but they're always very manly, you know.
Muscular prose.
Oh, yeah, and when they see a woman, the first thing is always about her, you know, her physical attributes, and can they do this, and can they do that. And, I mean, you know, the guy that writes it is probably, you know, his neck is like a pencil, you know. And let's talk about wish fulfillment. Real men don't talk and write like that, my God. And I knew I'm not going that way. Sort of the Mickey Spillane school of, although Mickey's good. I mean, he's actually
He is good. No, he is.
But his imitators have really damaged
And you know,
the
it's
genre.
hard to take that away. I mean, after Silence of the Lambs, there were a whole lot of, you know, really
know.
bad imitators. Right now, the Da Vinci Code is just spewing up, you know, a whole bunch of imitators of that kind of thing. Whenever there's a huge hit, it happens. But here you are with 12 books, and you've created really this sort of community that's obviously very real to you and must be very real to your readers. It's kind of like an ongoing soap. You know, you've got, because it's a small, Crozet, Virginia is a small southern community, you don't, you know, you bring in outsiders. I mean, you have to, or you lose all your credibility. Someday you have to bring in strangers to die, or it's all going to go away. But you still have this essential cast. And, you know, we've watched them kind of get to know themselves and move through life and make mistakes and coalesce into new relationships, and on it goes. And you've also kind of written about how the landscape has changed. I loved your comments about I-64, how it had divided the farms in Albemarle County, and particularly about the mountain, because I have struggled up and down that damned mountain in all that fog. That's the highest fog technology, road fog technology is built into that mountain with all those pop-up lights and the whole bit. And they can't conquer it, can they? No matter how good the road, they can't get past the fog.
Nope.
But I really love the way you write about that. And even in this book, where you've got the new post office, and Harry has to decide how she's going to deal with, you know, a whole shift in postal technology.
And she's a young woman. She can deal with a shift. What she can't deal with is the emotional shift.
Right.
And Crozet is changing. I mean, in real life, Crozet is changing.
Sure it is.
Money's coming into it because it's a fairly nondescript town, which is why I like it. There's nothing cute and gentrified about it. But it's changing, and poor Harry's sitting in the middle of it, and what do I do now? I mean, and the one thing I like about Harry, which I don't share with her, is that she doesn't know. She doesn't have a clear vision of what she wants to do with her life. And
Or who she's spending it with.
yeah, I mean, does she really love this guy, or doesn't she? And he's all she knows, really.
On the other hand, maybe she doesn't know him. I mean, I thought that was part of the message of this book, was that maybe he isn't exactly the person she's thought he was.
Well, he isn't. And what happens sort of in the one that Sneaky just finished is she comes upon a revelation, and emotional revelations are very hard for her because she's very repressed, as am I. She realizes that he and Boom Boom have done the hard emotional work because of their mistakes. And she sort of likes Boom Boom now, but not too much. This is the woman that her husband, her ex-husband, had an affair with. And they have changed, and really learned from what they've done, learned about emotional damage to others and themselves. She hasn't.